Seven Seeds Farm at Siskiyou Seeds since '97.
Oh,
So
wow.
maybe if you could share like your name and if you have a business and if you're currently using social media for marketing or just personal. So,
My name is Emily. I'm not currently a business owner, but I work for Code 3 Coffee and Snacks, Robin Summer. Social media, I do Facebook and Instagram, and then I do our social media for the coffee shop, like creating posts and stuff like that. Yeah.
I'm Trinity. I also work at Code 3. Same thing, personal, Facebook, Instagram, do a little bit of TikTok, but I don't make videos. And yeah, that's about it.
I'm Rob. I'm one of the owners of Code 3 Coffee, and I'm on all the platforms, so I have multiple jobs, so I have to stay up to speed on all of them.
Yeah.
So.
I'm Summer, and I am the other owner of Code 3 Coffee, and I personally do social media. I let the girls do most of the social media at the coffee shop. I am taking this class because I feel like that's the only way that the world is going, is all social media.
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer it not, but that's just how I work. I like paper and pen and all the things. But it's the way that it's going, so I know that I need to educate myself a little bit more on how it all works, because he is the IT guy, so I just kind of let him do it all. But I know I need to know how, so.
Hi, I'm Noel, and my sweetheart and I run a family business called Homestead Culture around seeds and online education, and yeah, we use social media, kind of a love-hate relationship with it. Yeah.
I'm Karen. I have Applegate Artisan Soap Company. I make soap. Since I've been doing these classes, yesterday I set up my first Instagram account for my soap business.
Nice.
Finally. I have Facebook. I've been doing that personal end of the soap. Have my web page that's outdated, which I need to set up, but I also filmed a video today that I'm going to post, so getting excited. I'm trying.
That's good.
So I'm Jeff. I had a career in the solar industry. In the last few jobs, we sold exclusively online. So the website was vital to us. I'm now the business network manager for A Greater Applegate. So I'm here fulfilling that role and enjoying Don's class.
All right, thanks.
I'm Rosalind, and I don't own a business, and I'm not ever going to.
Smart woman. Very smart.
I'm the business librarian for Jackson County Library. So I am the one who came up with this idea and shanghaied Don into doing these classes. And so we have quite a few resources for small business owners, either to start or grow your business at the library. And I'd be happy to talk to any of you about that.
Wonderful. Awesome.
Awesome. Well, I started my farm years ago, like before, iPhones and social media was a thing. And we used to grow seed for grow food for farmers markets, restaurants, medicinal herbs for different wholesale, like Herb Farm, Pacific Botanicals, and then seed on wholesale contract. So that whole world, when I started the farm, I lived off grid. We were on solar and micro hydro, and I was like, I'll never have a cell phone. I'll never have email. And then, slowly you realize the world is such that if you don't, you're just not in the game. You're going to be irrelevant. Mm-hmm. And then when I started Siskiyou Seeds in 2009, that was about when I began to pay attention. I think Facebook started around in that window. Yeah, 2008 or something. So becoming aware that at that point, just more and more people are moving there. I just checked on Grok earlier today when I was preparing for this, that currently 73% of Americans have a social media account, at least one. Globally, it's 3.5 billion people. So it's roughly half of humanity is communicating this way. And Seth Godin introduced me to this concept of the long tail of the comet, It used to be the comment was what everybody paid attention to. That was the New York Times ad, the radio ad, the TV ad, that kind of stuff. Like, that's where all the attention was, and you couldn't advertise unless you were at that level. Otherwise, you're just, taking out a little, eighth of a page ad in some kind of local thing. And nowadays, Seth Godin also introduced me to the concept of you just need 10,000 fans to, start a business. If you have 10,000 people that are into what you do, then you have a viable business. And so that's considered the long tail of the comment. So you don't need to advertise in the New York Times and those traditional things. You can just be in these more smaller niche areas and reach the people that are interested in what you have to offer. So particularly if your business, like you mentioned, a coffee shop is local, unless you're like roasting beans and shipping them, through the internet, then you don't need that broad reach. So I think that's a really important thing to consider is like ad spend, if you will. And so I prepared some slides to kind of take us through that journey, and I feel like my relationship to social media is there's the Oprah effect stuff, like you get an article in a bigger publication, whether that's an interview or a podcast interview, and then all of a sudden you have attention, and you want somewhere for that attention to go to find you, because they maybe won't remember it all. They'll just be like, oh, the name of your business, and then they look at Instagram or Facebook or wherever to find it. Yeah. And now, because AI is running most of the search, we probably all noticed, like Google, the first search that comes up is an AI generated thing, and even probably the ones below are all AI. So it used to be you could kind of pick the lane that you wanted to be in, and now I feel like you have to be everywhere. And I've been working on a book for the last couple years, and part of the reason it's not published is I realized, like, I have to build up the entire platform, the foundation of all the different things, the Facebook account, the podcast, the YouTube channel, all the things, which is a bit exhausting. And part of it, you can get good at cross-posting. Obviously, like Facebook and Instagram have that functionality, whereas if you post on Instagram, it's auto-populating to Facebook. And when you're on YouTube, if you create a video, when you go into the share function, it'll share it to X, LinkedIn, I think a few others. It won't share to Facebook and Meta. I don't know why they don't agree. It seems like they have different contractual agreements. But the thing is, I feel like as soon as you figure out a system that works for you, like for a little while we were doing Facebook advertising, we found if we spent $100 on advertising, we'd make about $1,000. Like we could watch just like a quick boost of it. Now I feel like that system's broken. Same with MailChimp. Like we use email, our email list is a really valuable thing. We put a lot of work into building our email list. And we're at about 20,000 people on our email list. Although I'm noticing that we're actually losing people faster than we're accruing people organically. Because I think most people like myself, like, we just get too many emails. So I'm like constantly unsubscribing to things. So, but we used to find we would send out an email blast and we would get about 3 days of increased engagement. Now it's like half a day and it's gone. Just the churn of the attention economy. Has everybody heard that term, the attention economy? Because that's basically what social media is trying to do. It's like their whole business model is hours on the site. And so, the Cambridge Analytical scandal that came out a few years ago was finding, like for Facebook, that they were optimizing things that were divisive, violent, argumentative, negative, because that engaged more like, what? That person said that? I'm gonna comment. Even though, hopefully you all know that if you're entering a comment thread, 60% of those comments, if not more, is AI at this point. It's estimated actually 40% of the total content of social media right now is AI generated.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
AI talking to itself.
Exactly.
Right.
Wow.
They found, what was it like during the last election, 99% of the like conservative Christian sites on Facebook were coming out of Russian bot farms. And this isn't to say anything about the Christian faith or conservative political leanings, but it was like a way to corral people in this arena and then have them, battle it out like gladiators. So I think we have to be constantly learning the new techniques. And I am fortunate to have a 19-year-old and 23-year-old sons. So they're helping. Like, we have a TikTok account. I don't have a TikTok account, but we have one for Siskiyou Seeds that my son manages. I don't even know what's on there. But we can't afford to not be where
Right.
the conversation's happening. And with that said, before I dive into all that, I recently went up to an event that a dear friend of mine, Lane Selman, who's an adjunct professor of horticulture for Oregon State University, and she lives in Portland, and she's grew up on a citrus farm in Florida, but her whole family's from Sicily, so they have that like Sicilian food culture thing really down. So she started this thing because she knows all these seed growers like myself. She's also in the food scene in Portland, called the Culinary Breeding Network. And they do these various events. Like just last weekend, I went to the Quince Festival. It was sold out, like 400 people at a quince festival. Like most people have never even heard of quince, and this one had 15 different quince ciders on tap, all these different chefs making quince things. I don't sell quince. I just know like being there for the conversation is important. But the reason I bring this up is in September, I went to the Tomato Fest, and I had a double booth. I had a tasting of 25 different varieties of tomatoes, just bowls and toothpicks. And we had 800 people show up at this thing. I had a line of people waiting a half hour to taste tomatoes for 4 hours. Like, I was doing nothing but just cutting up tomatoes. And I brought up all these seed packets for heirloom seeds, because that's mostly what we're doing. We completely sold out. I grossly underestimated how much traction we'd get. I should have had some little card or something, for people to take, like, hey, if you're interested in these new varieties, I know you tasted it, but it's not available yet, but it will be, so they could put it on their fridge or something. But I bring this up of, I sometimes underestimate the value of those in-person things and creating genuine interactions where we're making eye contact, we're sharing a funny story or something personal, and then we create, because I think there's a hierarchy of customers. There's the people that buy your product once or your service. There's the people that, regularly come to you. There's the people that always go to you. And then there's the people that always go to you, take pictures of it or tell their friends and post it on social media. Like, those are your cheerleaders. So one cheerleader is worth like 100 occasional customers, because they're literally doing marketing for you. So that's like one little hack I figured out with Instagram is, if those of you that are familiar with it, you can add somebody to your close friends. Anybody that reposts anything for Siskiyou Seeds is all of a sudden one of our close friends. And I'm reposting it, and for them, they don't know, like, we're this tiny family farm. For them, it's like, oh my God, the seed company is like resharing a picture of me and my tomatoes from my garden. And they feel good about it. And so those reciprocal relationships, so it's an energetic, like, stoking of the fire of, it's not just money, it's energy. And so back to that attention economy, and that's another quote from Seth Godin: in a room where everybody's shouting, how do you make an impact with a whisper? And I think that's something that's why I brought my guitar. I'm not going to sing you a song, but I'm using it for a little analogy about how many different ways can you whisper? Because in a world of thirst traps on Instagram or any of the things, like, how do you, by being authentic, like, you could be ridiculous and gather attention, but I would not encourage any of us to do those various thirst traps, whether it's, the things like sex sells or being adversarial or, scandalous or contentious. I don't think those are good approaches, personally. And I think, the quality of your product or service ultimately is the best advertising that you can do. So how do you get those cheerleaders, like I was mentioning before? They're literally saying, hey, this is awesome. I went to this coffee shop, we had such a good experience, or that kind of thing. So just some framing there. And I'll just dive into the slides I made. So, have a strategy. So I'm starting it off with this like Instagram monetization funnel. I've never made $1 from our Instagram channels per se, but a lot of people come from there to go to our website. So, you want to build a strong profile. And so that was the original, that was like the old model. Is everybody seen like the Instagram model where somehow they're really crafty and it's like picture, color block, picture, color block. Like they create this grid so when you go to the profile, it's like, oh wow, they really did a nice job. That doesn't matter at all anymore. But you still want to build a strong profile, like a good depiction of who you are, what you do. Use Linktree. Everybody know what Linktree is? You're new to Instagram. Write down Linktree.
What is it?
Well, Instagram only gives you one web link until you have like a business profile and your shop is integrated in. So on your bio page, you only get one link. So what Linktree is that goes there, and then it's like a third-party app, and you can have a YouTube channel, your website, whatever else, a podcast interview you're on, and you can adjust it, and it's free. It's really easy to use. Everybody either uses Linktree or something like it. I would say Linktree is probably 95% of what I see. But it's a way where you can create your own like drop-down menu of web links inside of Instagram. So, you have to have that like strong profile, increase followers. I would say the best way to increase followers is the Oprah effect, which is ask somebody who has a podcast in your field or is in media, whether it's a local something, AGA. Today Megan asked me like, I want you to describe a succinct description of how can AGA become the like regenerative chamber of commerce for the Valley. And so that's a bit of my homework. But like who are your allies that could help get your business more attention? Because otherwise, like buying followers and that, I've never done that. It seems like that's a good way to eventually have your Instagram account canceled. But I think aligning yourself with other people with bigger platforms is the key thing. Just like I talk about, like I've been on a couple podcasts of people that have been on Joe Rogan. So that's like this like 2 degrees of separation. Like pretty much Joe Rogan is the highest listened to podcast in the world. So if you're on that, then you're gonna have a huge reach. And I have a few friends, like my friend Margaret Roach, she's a writer for the New York Times, and she about every 2 years, she's like, if you have something really big coming up that you want attention, I'll write up. You'll be in my my podcast or my blog. But she's like, it kind of like that volleyball play, where you like throw the ball up and you're gonna spike it. So she's the like, we'll throw the ball up and then my thing will spike it. So how do you leverage those things? And I would like to get better within the Applegate in our like business network of Instagram takeovers and shout outs for local businesses and like a business of the week or a month or something like that, because the attention economy is real. So there's various tools. I would say like LinkedIn would be one. Having a strategy, like we use a thing called Planoly, Planoly, which is a way to create a bunch of content. And so like for me, because we manage our social media with myself, my general manager, and my elder son, we'll take a bunch of pictures, they'll create some content, message me like, Don, we need descriptions for it all. Because like it has to be my voice, because otherwise it might be wrong if it's my son doing it or something. And then we can schedule it, so we have a consistent. I believe that's kind of old school Instagram, was like rational. I'm about to get to, I think, where it's at now. Creating, engaging content, monetizing stories and reels, which, I don't do that like product placement, like here I am wearing an LL Bean shirt, but we all see people that do that. I know that might work for others, but I don't personally do that. So, kind of moving forward, and this is where I feel like we're at now, is the old model was a curated profile, like the grid on Instagram, if you will, or your Facebook profile that's very like clean and like accessible, kind of like if you were to take out a Yellow Pages ad. You only have so many words. So the reach occurs from a content graph from the algorithm showing it to a test audience. So that's an important thing to consider. As you do something on social media, it's not just going out to everybody. They send it to a little test. And if people look at it or they scroll by, it can literally tell how long your phone and stuff is constantly looking at you. It can tell how long if you hover on something without clicking on it, that is the same as clicking on it. Because it's doing like retinal scan stuff constantly. And if it works with a test audience, it'll blast it out to a wider audience. Has anybody here had a social media post go like semi-viral?
Yeah.
Oh, come on, look at that smirk. You have, like, tell me, like.
The main one I had, I was watching a herd of elk, and this one went over the fence, and she flipped upside down, and I used it was, it felt bad for the elk, but it was funny. And I linked it with a video from The Office, I think was the TV show, and I don't know, I made a few $100 on it. I posted it, thought it was funny, and then
it was a carpool.
Yeah, carpool thing,
Okay.
and Viral Hog
So
saw it
hilarious.
and paid me for the rights to it, and I made a few $100 on it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was, that's what parkour.
Parkour.
Parkour. 'Cause she jumped, parkour.
Funny.
Yeah.
She jumped the fence and caught her legs, and she just flipped over and down into a ditch and got up and looked around, and and it was funny, and I made a few $100 on it.
Yeah.
So, by
Well, that
chance.
underscores, kind of like the point I was bringing up before of like kind of hitching your cart like you did to The Office. So The Office is already like triggering the algorithm,
Mhm.
so to speak. So that is one way of doing that, or probably a number of you have noticed how like up and coming musicians will cover somebody else's song who's more famous, because you cover a Fleetwood Mac song, all of a sudden you can be hashtag Fleetwood Mac and you're going to show up in that. So even though you might be a nobody, you are going to be higher in the algorithms because you're playing popular music. And that's been a trick for a long time. Like when jazz musicians figured out like, hey, if we cover Kool and the Gang songs or Stevie Wonder songs in the 70s, the cool kids will want to come to our shows, where if you're doing avant-garde jazz, nobody cares. So that's an important thing to consider. And that virality is there's no way you can there's no recipe for that. It's like a casino thing. It's just a roll of the dice. And I'm always surprised sometimes of like what for us catches fire. Like we had one go crazy viral and get like 100,000 views about comfrey. Like how many people grow comfrey? Like sure, we sell it, but it was one that just took off. And so every now and then when we need a little boost, we can reshare that because that one already was popular. So anyhow, back to this idea that your reach occurs from a content graph from the algorithm showing it to a test audience. So nowadays, the old model was a gallery. You just did a really nice job. It's just like, I'm an artist. I'm a great artist. But like Van Gogh died in obscurity. It wasn't until after he died that his paintings were known.
Did you lend me one droid?
Yeah. So, and that, Copernicus was the same thing, like we can go back through history and see like it's just being brilliant and great is not enough. Nowadays, it's like a street market. Are you the vendor at the street market who's just quietly waiting for your potatoes or your bread or whatever to sell? Or are you hey, have you tried my fresh bread? Would you like a sample? Like hustling it. And you kind of have to be a hustler, even though it's a little annoying. And I like this metaphor of the graffiti artist. You just did it. You were radical. Like what, you were sharing what you did. You used elk has nothing to do with coffee in a lot of ways, but, or The Office. Well, The Office has something to do with coffee.
Right.
But, you're using your own creativity. So in a way that's cool because it takes it, and we can see TikTok. I'm not a TikTok user or anything, but I know people that have things they did with 1 million views, and I'm like, you're a nobody and you're not even that good, and how did, you know? But it's just that, the roulette, you chose the right thing and you won, you know, or like the lottery. The lottery doesn't, the winner doesn't go to the person that like bought the most tickets. So I think that's an important shift that, you know, to consider moving forward. So you can use AI to test different ideas. So start with a strong idea, launch a story, you know, or an insight, and then, you know, generate content from that with hooks, edits, captions, then test quickly. Just put it out there and see what works. And then you can measure results, you know, and evaluate metrics, click-through rate, and if you look at the back of Facebook, if you really are using Facebook, there's the like Meta business tools thing, or Instagram has, if you look at, it has all these metrics. I have a screenshot of some. And then scale the winners and take what work and apply more broadly. And, you know, like for us, what's interesting is like, I'm the business owner, I'm the one who knows the most about the product, but the reality is if we have one of our 30-something employees doing something, it is just higher. Because most of our users, 60 to 65% of Instagram users are female. And so if they're interested in like a gardening-based product, they're gonna relate to someone that looks more like them. I don't really buy anything in the garden world, you know, and grow it myself. So I'm not really the best person. So that's kind of like within this, that's something we've figured out over time. So, you know, you scale the winners, figure out what worked, and scale more broadly. Here's another way if you're interested in monetizing, you know, you have to start with a strong base, and that's where, you know, ultimately, no matter what you're doing, you have to offer a good product or service. Like, there's no way you can put lipstick on a pig and sell it. You have to be doing a good job. Because otherwise, really quickly, the internet is brutal. Like, the comment threads are brutal, and, you know, as I get more, you know, attention for my writing and stuff, I have colleagues that are like, never read the YouTube comments. Just don't. You know, like we have one video out there that has like 4.5 million views, and sometimes I'll look through the comments of it, and it's just discouraging because there's a lot of stupid people out there, and it affects you. But if you know you're doing a good thing, then you don't have to worry about that. So, you know, figure out, you know, why are you monetizing this? Is it just to be like a Yellow Pages ad, or are you literally doing, you know, spending money on social media marketing? And I have one buddy, he does the marketing for the Menla Institute that does like yoga and meditation things out in New York. It's Robert Thurman started it. He was a Buddhist studies professor at Columbia. You probably never heard of him, even though he was the Dalai Lama's best friend for a lot of years, and why we even know who the Dalai Lama is. You probably know him more from his daughter, Uma Thurman, who the actress. Anyhow, my buddy does the marketing for them, and they will spend like $10,000 for an online course that they're doing. Let's say they're doing like an online meditation yoga course, and they'll just saturate it. So, you know, when you're scrolling through and you see that sponsored, and you can tell like some people are just, and it's all about dollars, because all these platforms are learning this. They don't want you to use their platform for free, because it is for free to use. It's a pay-to-play program. But they'll turn that $10,000 ad spend into $100,000 of course signups the first day. You know, like, whoa, you know, they get 10 to 1. So, and I have a slide I created from some advice he had. You know, so your financial plan, like figure out a budget. Right now, if you average out US businesses, social media represents about 15 to 20% of their ad spend. So the rest is probably email marketing and other traditional forms of marketing. So even though I would say that like Facebook and Meta is the largest, that is the New York Times of our times, a lot of the legacy businesses, you know, the pharmaceutical industry and stuff, are still advertising on television and that kind of stuff. Yeah, and so just, this is again speaking to the have a strategy. This is an unavoidable element, like obviously where we live is not on this highlighted area, but half the US population lives in these shaded areas. But it is something, so if you do advertising on Facebook or Meta, it's particularly coming in through the back of the Meta business tools. You can choose where you're targeting. So like, even though we're here in Southern Oregon, probably 30% of our seed sales are in the Portland, Oregon area.
The dark spots are the shaded areas,
Yeah,
and that's where half of the US population is spread.
exactly. The big
It's
cities.
spread.
Although,
We're
what's
not even-
interesting,
We're not even there.
the Greater Rogue Valley, how many people, would you guess, just popcorn out some ideas, live in the Greater Rogue Valley?
Well, they changed the Greater Rogue Valley, so.
Yeah, so the
Now
Grants
it
Pass
includes
Metro
Grants
actually-
Pass,
Yeah,
Cause now it includes Grants Pass, and
Yeah.
it didn't used to.
yeah.
It's like 175,000, 150,000.
Anyone else guess? It blew my mind when I found this out. It's the 4th largest metro area in the state. So obviously Portland, Eugene, Salem. So we're number 4. 500,000 people.
Wow.
So, wow, dang. 500,000 people. So if you only need 10,000 people to do a business, we've got 50 times that right in this valley. But they might not be the people that are, going to patronize you. So for us, it's something, like when I'm doing advertising, I'm like Portland, Bay Area, LA, Salt Lake, where are the, we're an internet-based business, so we can be more broad, but I'm not really gonna go to the eastern side of the country because our story narrative doesn't reach that. But it's something to consider. Here's another demographic thing. This comes out of the Ford Family Foundation, created this organ by the numbers. I'm sure it's in the library here. You can probably order one for free, but it's an incredible demographic study, county by county. This is 2021 dollars. But just looking at, what are the demographics of our area, compared to the state. This is probably nothing new to anyone who lives here, like less college educated than or the higher poverty rate, lower median income, higher unemployment. Actually, no. Yeah. And, percentage of the workforce. So these kind of things are useful. Here's another one from that organ by the numbers. Just to understand, where are we in relationship to the rest of the state? And so this is all part of doing your homework. All this stuff is out there. In terms of AI tools, I use Grok personally. It's probably 10 times a day I'm asking something on Grok. Because I'm just, more and more I'm I want to know, what is this? What is that? What is that? And then screenshotting it, so later when I'm sitting at my desk going through my photos, oh yeah, I wanted to remind myself that. And just, being a subject matter expert is an important way to position yourself if you do hope to later get on podcasts or interviews, that kind of thing, that then boosts your social media engagement. Here's another, just comparing the various platforms, on the left, what age group is engaging in there, what is it? I know from having kids, they were like, oh, Dad, Facebook's just for old people. Instagram's where we are, and then we're all on Snapchat and TikTok. And that is a bit of the spin or the marketing approach of these kind of things. But things like LinkedIn, if depending on what you're offering, you want to be engaging in that. And obviously nowadays I would say Twitter, X is probably a more conservative, politically audience than others. So just playing, it gets exhausting, I think, in a way. But you can create content and then just share it throughout different platforms. So I'll have little days, like today, I was like, okay, I need to stoke the fire of some sales. So all this too will be up on a YouTube video on the AGA site if you're interested in.
All these are different videos or platforms to spread yourself in the internet.
Yeah.
It used to be that, excuse my ignorance in this question, it used to be that Facebook was the first one that started that type of connection that people start showing off their stuff, and all this is created after that?
Yeah. I remember when I first was exposed to Instagram, a friend showed me in like 2012, 2013. I was like, what is this? Like, you just share pictures? Like, that's dumb. Why would anybody do that? And I was like, have at it. And my friend that was sharing it to me had like 5,000 Facebook followers at that time, was like an international yoga teacher. And she's like, no, this is going to be a thing, because like the right brain people, the more feminine inclined folks will love that. Whereas for me, like the Facebook of old was like reading people's essays and stuff, commenting on it. So, and similarly, the bottom ones, this is Snapchat and TikTok, are, young people, and it's just this crazy, like, frenetic ADHD, I only have time for 5-second videos kind of thing. So, where like LinkedIn is like reading, I don't know, like the back of the New York Times or something. Like, it's very slow. It's not an action sport. So here's another, just way of looking at that, so, between the characteristic between Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, what type of content. It is important to consider that YouTube right now is the #2 search engine after Google. So somebody wants to look up something, Jim Carrey, actor, type it into YouTube. You're gonna get a bunch of stuff there. So if you're not on YouTube, that's a huge missed opportunity. And I know we get, I think it's like either weekly or monthly, like Google Analytics from our Google search, and that's something that you should be, when I was talking about that most businesses spend about 20% of their total ad spend on social media, it is important to consider that probably the lion's share of their ad spend is SEO and Google stuff, because you can literally spend money on Google advertising to get yourself up there.
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully everybody knows, like, those sponsored links that show up at the top, whenever you click on that, it charges money to the business paying for that. They may have a listing lower down, but it's literally like a dime or something every time you click on that they have to pay. What's that?
A dime adds up quickly.
Yeah. Especially when you're, a big business. So it's just, all of us, we're not gonna do all of this, but we can find like what's your lane, what's your angle. Here's just some screenshots from our Siskiyou Seeds Instagram. It gives us, you can see on the left, it says last 30 days. So what's interesting for me is this post was made by my employees, women, and it got the most engagement. This one I thought I did a really nice job on. I got half as much traction. And my one from the thing up in Portland, like the tomato trial thing that I thought was so cool, got 1/4 of the engagement of the one that my employees made. That's why I let them do it, and I pay them to do that. So, and then here's when people are active. So when you post makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same for everybody. So for us, Mondays at lunch hour, people are grinding at work, and then they're on their lunch break and they're like doing the thing. That's when, and here it's, later in the day and Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning when people should be at church. They're sitting on Instagram. Maybe they're in church on
That's their
Instagram.
church.
I don't know.
They're at church.
So is that an analytics on that middle one? Is there, because that's part I have not looked at. I don't get on Instagram much. I let the girls deal with that. So there's an analytics back page.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like you go to your profile and it's, I think, one of the first things down.
Okay.
And you can tweak it. You can look at like last 90 days, last week, or there's like a ton of tools, and now there's AI suggestions. I hadn't looked at it in a while, and now as we move into winter, I need to like kind of go back to school personally about what are the new AI tools, because there's just, everything's changing so rapidly with AI.
How long of a period of time are you talking about?
Oh, well, you can tweak the parameters. See, like here, it says last 30 days, but that little icon means you can change it, like today or last week, or you can look, or all time, you can figure out the parameters. And then here in our last 30 days, we had almost 18,000 views. Of that, 83% were our followers, 17% were non-followers. So that's important to consider because that's content we're creating that somehow Instagram or Meta thought was worthy of putting it out there. You know, when you go on Instagram, the search function, that's how you go viral, is you get in there. Because so many people are just scrolling. I don't know if hashtags make a difference anymore. It seems like AI just picks up stuff, right? Anybody ever done a reverse image search on Google? Wild. Like if I took a picture of you, it would tell you like, oh, she's wearing a North Face puffy jacket. Here's the North Face website. It is crazy how much granular info, like just the AI tools can pick out of things. So it looks at the accounts reached. For us, we actually went down almost 20% over the previous month. And then half of our content that was really making stuff happen was stories, just our stories. So that's super easy to just the stories. A lot has shifted our attention economy. It used to be people would watch a 5-minute video and then it went to a 3-minute video. Now it's about 30 seconds.
So is that why too, a lot of times when they're doing that they'll say like, oh, watch this to the very end because it's the best, it's the best idea, it's the best, whatever.
Or on
or
YouTube,
the number one reason, watch it all the way to the end.
Yeah,
because
you can create timestamps where when you kind of like hover the cursor, it has text that pops up like, here's the seed planting part, here's the transplant.
Right.
Because people no one has enough time for all this stuff.
Right.
So anyhow, we probably all noticed a shift. I've never been on TikTok, but I'm aware that TikTok is vertical orientation. See how my phone right now I'm recording on the horizontal orientation for YouTube, but you record vertical. So sometimes you need to do content twice. Once for YouTube and then vertical for Instagram stories, TikTok, and then notice how Instagram shifted to the Reels. It was all about the Reels, and then they made it really easy for you to do that, which is vertical, and it was more of a TikTok style, and they embedded all those tools in it, where, probably those of us that have been using these tools for a while, we remember back when you had to use a third-party app to do your editing and then import the video into Instagram. And then notice how YouTube just, I don't know, a year or two ago shifted to the shorts. It's all about shorts now. Because they realized they lost so much market share to TikTok. Like TikTok just kind of went out of nowhere and then boom, everything was on TikTok. So Instagram and YouTube are all about those formats. And I've noticed when we record content for YouTube, my son, who knows a lot more about all this than I do in terms of the editing, will select out juicy chunks and then do the transcription thing, so where when somebody talks and the words populate, and he'll be like, Dad, here's a dozen 30-second shorts, upload them to YouTube, and then because he watches videos about this, he says, spend 15 minutes on YouTube before you upload it, and just go on videos, doesn't even matter what, like, comment, just whatever, share. It doesn't even really matter what you do, but you're engaging with the platform. You're in there. And then you load your thing, and you've already warmed up the algorithm to your thing, and then you're going to be way higher. Interesting. But you can imagine you're the one coding this. It's the attention economy. Remember, they want everybody to spend 7 to 8 hours a day on all these platforms. I mean, it's completely insane, and young people do. I don't think you should. This is an old image, but I just thought I'd share it, it's germane to what I just brought up. So this is Facebook looking at what in dollars each Facebook user is worth to them. And so you can see how it's been rising. This is 2014, it's even more now. These are other countries. This is EU, this is Asia. Because they're literally monetizing your content. And this is an important thing to consider about the world that we're in now, is like, what's the biggest real estate, temporary, like short-term real estate? Airbnb. Does Airbnb own any actual real estate? No. What's the biggest taxi service in the world? Uber. What's the biggest media source in the world? Facebook. Facebook doesn't create any content. You know, so it's like, again, it's this attention economy, so curating this, and all the while, and back to the Linktree thing, what I'm hearing with YouTube and all this is, you wanna get people off the social media sites to your website as quickly as possible. So how can you do that? Because that's where you have them, and then they're closer to buying. It's, you know, for us, we do some sales through Facebook and Instagram, but it's very challenging, and it's always fraught. Like, all our medicinal herbs just got axed because we're making medical claims by calling them medicinal, so we can't sell them. So we want to get people off that site into our area. So it's just worth considering, because it's all, we're being hypnotized by all this stuff. That side's too blurry. So this is the image that my friend Joshua developed, that he's the one that does the marketing for the Menla Institute, and I think this is really important to understand, is these 3 metrics in this Venn diagram. Your foundation is like, what do you make? What do you make, grow, sell, offer? You gotta have that down. Your magnetics are, why are people drawn to you instead of something else? Your amplification is mostly what we're talking about here, is using the tools of the megaphone to broadcast to a larger thing. So you can imagine if you took this circle and shifted it north, this triangle of overlap would decrease. This is the people that come to your business and give you money. You know, that's what you want to tweak. So if your foundation sucks, you know, if you take that circle and move it there, then maybe you need to work on that. So it's just understanding you have 3 dials at your disposal in terms of, is your business working to create the life you want to live? Like, is it enough money to pay all the bills, you know, and afford to live a life that you feel like you deserve? So the amplification one is where social media comes in. And if I live out in Williams, and I have all these friends that were, you know, not really paying attention to any of this stuff for years, and now they look at what I've done and they're like, wow, that's so great. You like built a brand and a business, and that was great. And you know, so now I'm trying to like, well, that's why it's important to have social media. It's not just like this, you know, narcissism or personality cult thing. It's, you know, and that's what Siskiyou Seeds, we've defined a really clear lane. We don't talk politics. We don't have opinions about anything other than gardening. Our job is to help people grow things. And then it makes it really easy, because, you know, all these things come along. And it's really easy to get sucked into Black Lives Matter, or, you know, oh my God, they renamed, you know, Indigenous People Day, Columbus Day. We want to make a post about this. And then all of a sudden you're alienating. I have one friend who has a similar farm up in Washington, and they use their platform. You know, so what they're doing with their amplification is political stuff. And I know they're alienating a ton of potential customers, and maybe they don't need them. But that's important to consider, is stay in your lane. So, you know, if this dial, when you need to like, you know, sales are down, you turn up the amplification thing, that it works, you know, it's like reaching the people that you want to reach. So I realized I brought my guitar. I want to bring it out just for this one little thing. And as we talk about that kind of thing, you know, people are like, oh, there's like, I don't know how to do that. And what I'm going to share with you here is like, you know, there's your voice that you have, but how many different ways can you share it? So I'm going to play for you an A chord 15 different ways. And you'll just see like, oh wow, but it's all A. You're saying the same thing. But each one of those is going to reach, you know, the way I like to think about it sometimes is, remember that movie, The Breakfast Club?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you all
Those
see
two
it?
don't.
Okay.
I've seen it.
Oh, we laughed about that
Yeah.
recently. We got to sit them down and show them some old school.
Nowadays, The Breakfast Club would have like a dozen young people in it, because there's more ways to be. But back in the day, there were like the preppies, the nerds, the jocks, the, you know, the goths, the hippies, you know, you could just run down your thing. And so each one is going to speak to that. So, you know, here's A, here's A, here's A, here's A. I wasn't playing, I'm playing this. Here's A, here's A, here's A, here's A, here's an A, here's an A, and here's an A. You know, like that's a really different than this. So it's going to reach a different person. And then I can even be like way the heck up here, like That's an A. Here's an A. And just think about all the different ways that you have to reach people and not get frustrated. Because that's where I shared that one thing about the metrics thing, and I'm like, oh my God, my workers just sauntering up from the seed office to the greenhouse and taking some pictures of corn completely trumped all the posts that I'd made in terms of attention. So that was me being the whatever, I'll just say I'm the goth, trying to talk to the preppies or something, and the Breakfast Club analogy of it all. So I think it's important to within your team have people, and this gets back to a previous class where I talked about your different client avatars. Who is your typical person? We use MailChimp for our email newsletter, and you can go into the metrics in the back and it shows a pie chart. And for Siskiyou Seeds, we're 65% females that are between the age of 35 to 70. That's most of our clientele. That is so not me. It might be a similar age group,
Right.
but likewise too. So if, my kids who are 19 and 23, it's not them either. Although I'd rather invest more marketing energy in those young people that aren't yet tuned into no, gardening's cool. Gardening's gonna save you a lot of money. It's gonna be healthy, or fresh air, all these things. Whereas somebody that's 55 and older, I don't have to convince them nothing. They already know that. So when you think about your marketing ad spend, those avatars is really important to consider who you're trying to speak to. And that's, back to the Breakfast Club example, or, what kind of music did you listen to in high school? Because a lot of people, you don't change that much. It is deep down. So, I think that's a really important process to not just do once, but to do regularly over again, because different things change. I noticed I had a business years ago called Elderberry Alchemy, making herbal tea blends and tinctures and this kind of thing. It was the early 90s. And so I've been in the herbal world for a while, and I moved to Williams where the herb farm is, and it's and so I'm no, herbs are old hat. Everybody knows about medicinal herbs. And then about 5-10 years ago, there's this huge resurgence in interest in medicinal herbs from people that are, I don't know your age, but I'm just gonna say your age group. And I'm I don't know, but they don't want to hear it from me. They want to hear it from people that are similar to age and your age group. So I have an employee who's 35. I was Taryn, you are now in charge of all the medicinal herb thing, because it's your people, people that look like you. And Seth Godin had a great saying. He's people like us do things like this, and I think that's an important thing. We do have a kind of a tribal orientation to in-group, out-group kind of paradigm. So, I used the example in a previous class of your typical Patagonia customer, or, so for each of our businesses, we could probably just quick back of the napkin, what's your typical customer? What are the kind of things that they do? What kind of car do they drive? Where do they like to go on their days off? Do they like to go to the city, or do they like to go to the ocean, or stand up paddleboard on a river, And that all all of a sudden, let's say somebody's got their cool coffee cup. Are they in town against a brick wall, or are they picture of a lake, stand-up paddleboard, and the paddle laying over it in the background? And so all that is this interesting sleight of hand kind of thing that we're doing if we understand how to reach those people. And I'll close and maybe just do a few questions. There was a kids dentist years ago that I would take my kids to, and he would have a puppet, a little hand puppet on his hand over here, and talking to the kid, doing this whole thing. He was so good. And let's say they're getting a filling. He could be doing this whole thing, and nobody came and come in. The kid wouldn't even flinch. And that's a bit of what we're doing, is that within storytelling is what we're trying people to do, is to inhabit this version of themselves that's made better by whatever problem you're solving for them, and have them feel like it was their idea, by that in-group thing of well, I want to be part of that group. That's a cool group. They listen to this kind of music, they do these kind of things. And it may seem dishonest, but ultimately if our goal is to like uplift their quality of life, then it's on, you know, on brand, so. Yeah, I think that's my last, well, I mean, I think that, you know, in closing, just think about like how does what you're trying to do fit into this holistic whole culture thing. And really, like, for us, and I think this is helpful for any business, is our North Star, like our vision, is that seed companies become obsolete. Because everybody saves seeds, and they would never even think of buying seeds. Chances are that won't be achieved in this lifetime, but like when you're navigating, you're navigating on the water or the land, you don't actually reach the North Star, but it's leading you in the direction where you want to go. So I think it's helpful to have that super high bar. You know, like, so for coffee, everybody gets enough sleep, they're eating well enough, they drink enough water, that they never need another cup of coffee in their life. So, yeah, that's what I have to share. So maybe a couple questions.
Do you have any numbers or reference? It's been a few years back, but I had heard that like advertising your business, now obviously you showed the Instagram metrics, which I did actually look at ours, which I was very interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
But we have always operated on when we post our post or very strategic timing. There's businesses out there that post at 10 o'clock in the morning. Well, people are at work. You know, they're not supposed to be on their phones. But the market today has changed, right?
Yeah.
So the younger group, they're either on their phones or finding a way to sneak on their phones and all of that, where our clientele here in the Applegate is different, that they're looking at their phones between, we typically post at like 7 o'clock in the morning, because people are getting up, they've taken a shower, they're sitting down to have their coffee, and they're reading through the news, and our post is first. And then same thing in the evening time, if we do evening post, it's not at 5 o'clock, because we may not be first. So it's a little bit later than that, because now they've gotten home, they're sitting down, having their beer or glass of wine for the night, and then reading through the post, and I want to be number one. So, and do you have any stats on how that has changed? That's probably 5-6-year-old data that I'm operating off of.
I remember we've stumbled on the thing like Tuesdays was the best day to post. Because Monday, everybody's just like, it's an onslaught, it's Monday, there's just a lot of stuff to sift through. And you're talking kind of about A/B testing. So it's, you know, do a similar style of post and then look at the engagement, which you can do through those tools in the back and see, you know, and it's hard because we're up against the news. Let's say there's an earthquake in, you know, Pakistan, that, you know, that's going to affect how people are engaging with you. But it's this idea to like test quickly and then measure the results, and, you know, looking at that. You know, one of the things that I found is really helpful for us, because it's hard to know, like, did the social media effort translate into dollars? Because otherwise, why are you doing it? Is offering a code, like discount code in your stories or something, like, use this code now, 10% off, today only. And then, you know, whoever used this code saw your thing, and you can see if it was effective or not. You know, we do that a lot with like affiliate marketing and with all of our email newsletters. People are suckers for and oftentimes we'll do like 15%